is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Friday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. It's Friday. We made it to the end of the week. If you're a 9-to-5 grinder, congrats on the weekend. Maybe you're not there yet, but if you're listening on the way home, pay attention to the road, you mongrel. But anyway, we have a 5-game slate, we can call it, here tonight. It is there are teams playing hockey.
Yeah, there are 5 NHL hockey games on the schedule tonight. That's for sure.
Cliffy messaged me early this morning because, he's an hour ahead of me. I have kids, so he knows I'm up. He's like, what do you think about the show today? And I looked at the GPPs. I did not look at the matchups. I was like, the GPPs are good. We should do one because, tomorrow's the last day for 2 weeks anyway. So, okay, we'll do a show. I start my morning prep. I start going through the games. I was like, I have made a huge mistake. This is I don't know, like there's good actual hockey games, but from like a DFS standpoint, this is going to be a grind.
Yeah. Obviously we're touching on the games one by one. Pittsburgh Rangers, Pittsburgh with no Crosby and Malkin. Islanders going into Winnipeg. The Islanders are still missing half their blue line. Nashville going into Chicago. Chicago's without their best defensive forward, and Chicago's still Chicago. Edmonton, Colorado on a back-to-back, and both teams playing their last game before they head off for that Four Nations 2-week break. And then Dallas going into Los Angeles. We don't know what the Dallas lines are. Los Angeles missing their best defensive defenseman, and obviously the Stars have pretty significant injuries of their own. These are some interesting matchups.
Yeah. And last night wasn't exactly barn burner of a slate, it's like, yeah, this slate is kind of bad too. Had a decent night. I missed it because I fell asleep, pulled the Jake Harry, wake up to the DraftKings notification. He's been doing it right. I've been doing it way wrong. Hanging out in the Discord till all the wee hours in the morning, listening to everyone tilt while Jake sucks on his thumb, collecting checks. That's the way to do it. But yeah, no, Marty Netchus, man. So I went and checked Nat Stat this morning. They're up to 112 minutes at 5-on-5, him and McKinnon. They're still only shooting 5%. Like, if that doubles, no one is stopping them. No one. It's disgusting.
Yeah. I think by Hockey Viz's numbers, they're at 4.9 expected goals per 60 at 5-on-5. Like it's a bad power play. Like it's absolutely crazy. And I think I forget the number off the top of my head. Obviously we'll talk about it when the game comes around. I think they're at like 2.8 or 2.9 actual goals per 60 at 5-on-5 when they're on the ice together. Off the top of my head, compared to the last 6 weeks, that's about 25% higher than league average. And they're shooting 5%. It's like, oh my God. These guys are insane.
Yeah. That's going to be a good game. It's going to be tough we'll obviously break it down for you guys the best that we can. That's going to be tough to pinpoint in DFS. But let's get into this slate. Let's start breaking down this muck. This is the first time the Rangers, I think, are on the slate since they traded for JT Miller. I'm sure people are excited to hear me cry about the Rangers. But before we do get into the slate, we already have 150 of you on this 5-game slate hanging out with us. We do really appreciate it. We do have the 2-week Four Nations break coming up. So, there's going to be a break from DFS content. I don't know if they're going to have Four Nations DFS. I saw someone talking about it in the Discord this morning. It wouldn't be surprising to me if they had it because NBA is going to be on the All-Star break. There's no NFL will be over. There'll be no MLB, but we'll see. If you do want to go premium, you can click the link in the chat. Use promo code Stochastic15. That'll get you 15% off the subscription of your choice. With NHL going on a break, you have PGA, you have NBA, you have MMA. There's a nice pay-per-view in Australia this weekend starts regular time for the United States viewers. They'll be fighting wee hours of Sunday morning or something. I don't know why they do that, but it's fine for us. Let's get into the slate. Started off with a doozy. Pittsburgh Penguins with a 2.6 total heading into New York, Madison Square Garden. The Rangers have a 3.4 total. No Sidney Crosby for the Penguins. Ricard Raquel will be the top line center. He hasn't been a center since 2014 in Anaheim, which I didn't even remember. Cliffy had to go look it up for us before the show. He didn't remember. If Cliffy doesn't remember, I for sure won't remember. But like, he did take a fair bit of face-offs in back-to-back years, so I guess he came up playing some center. You do not want him being your top-line center in an NHL game, though. Rangers going Panarin, Zibanejad, JT Miller, Trocheck, Lafreniere, Riley Smith, Kreider, Brzezinski, Will Cooley. Pittsburgh going Raquel, Rust, Beauvillier, Bunting, Glass, Danton, Heinen, Hayes, Tomasino, Nieto. With Crosby out, I think Kevin Hayes takes his spot on the top power play unit. It is 2025. Good Lord. Okay. So, like, Pittsburgh is not a good defensive team as it is. They don't have a very good penalty kill as it is. You take Crosby out, it's definitely going to – I mean, I don't know how much it's going to hurt them defensively taking Crosby out. Like, he doesn't add much to the team defensively, but he is easily their best offensive player. And, you know, some people get clouded on how great he actually is because he does tend to whine a bit. He is one of the greatest players of our generation and all time. And he still is having a great offensive season at 38 years old. Every time I think about complaining about Crosby, I am the same age as him, and I had to get IV fluids the other day because I had a little boo-boo. So, like, yeah, this is going to hurt them really bad offensively. Defensively, they're always struggling. You know, the Rangers moved Mika Zibanejad to the wing. Obviously, Zibanejad and Panarin, when Zibanejad is the center, never worked. In a small sample so far with Miller at center, it has been working. The issue that I have with that line from a real-world standpoint is why the hell would you break up Trocheck, Lafreniere, Panarin? You can put Mika Zibanejad on Miller's wing with like Cooley or Kreider, and it would be a good line, and you'd still have your best line together. That being said, they're 20,800 here tonight, 26.2% top two stack, 12.7% projected ownership. They're fully correlated. This is an excellent matchup. I like them here tonight. Now, obviously, you have McDavid, you have McKinnon, you have expensive Nashville on this slate. I think this is, you know, we'll obviously talk about all those spots. I think this is one of the best spots on the night. So I don't mind this Rangers top line here. As a Rangers fan, I'm not a huge fan of the line for actual team purposes, but for DFS purposes, I do really like this line. The second line is fine, but you're not getting anyone on the top power play unit. Riley Smith is a massive downgrade from Panarin. He's just kind of there at this point. Like, he's not bad. He's not great. He's just kind of steady. And they're 16-5, which is pretty expensive for not getting any power play time. So I would defer to, you know, that top line for sure. I think a Kreider one-off is fine. On the Pittsburgh side, like, this team is a mess. I guess if you need a cheap one-off, Kevin Hayes because he's on power play one or something like that. Ricard Raquel one-off because he's going to play a bunch is fine. But, like, without Crosby, this team's going to hurt really bad offensively. So this is a Rangers game for me.
Yeah, I'll start on the Rangers side. I think the only line I really have interest in is that top line. You mentioned that they are perfectly correlated. That's important. Like the Penguins don't have a good penalty kill. It's been months now that their penalty killing has been like below average, to say the least. Like going back to Thanksgiving, their penalty kill percentage is middle of the league. If you go back just to January 1st, they're bottom 10. So like this is at best an average penalty kill. And they do take their fair share of penalties, not a ton, but again, around league average or a little higher of late. So this is a good power play spot for the Rangers. I want to get guys that are on the power play. I don't want to stack a $16,500 line that has 0 players on the top power play unit, like at least in a single entry. If you're MMEing, that's a different story. But all 3 on the top power play unit, that they're going to get minutes like at the low end around 18. At the high end, you might see them all around 20 or higher, depending on what they do with the Trocheck line. So they have been good so far. It's only been 40 minutes. I don't want to get like too far ahead of myself here. Like I don't want to say, after Mika Zibanejad was, pretty bad for like 3 months that, he's had 3 good games. So, everything's fine. But if anything, it'd be that top line. Because even the third line, like Brodzinski and Cooley have not been good together this year. 46 shot attempts for, 77 against per 60 minutes. These guys are getting ran over. And Chris Kreider at this stage of his career is not going to be a difference maker for them on the wing. So, if you want to one-off Kreider because he gets top power play time, that's fine. But to me, this is Rangers 1. Even Rangers 2. Trocheck and Lafreniere this season, without Panarin on the line, 53 shot attempts for, 64 against per 60 minutes in over 85 minutes together. If you look at last year in roughly the same amount of minutes without Panarin, they were even worse. Like Panarin is the difference maker for them. So all that, I would go to the top line. If you want to stay away from the Edmonton, Colorado game, I think this is the expensive line to go to. They are third by top 2 stack percentage. They do have massive leverage. Not really worried about any matchups on the Penguins side. So, to me, if you want to add Kreider, make it a power play stack, or if you just want a one-off Kreider, I think that's fine. But for me, if I'm stacking the Rangers, Panarin, Zibanejad, and Miller are included. On the Penguins side, it's kind of funny. I was talking to you before the show about this Pittsburgh top line. Now, you're right that Crosby is by far their best offensive player. If you look at the stochastic projections, the Beauvillier, Rust, Raquel line has a higher combined projection on stochastic tonight than the Winnipeg top line. It's a little over a point higher. Pittsburgh one higher than Winnipeg one, higher than the Islanders top line, higher than any line in Los Angeles, any line in Dallas. They have a pretty solid projection. And here's the thing. It's not like the Rangers have been elite defensively or anything. They have made some improvements. They owe a lot to Igor Shesterkin and Jonathan Quick playing pretty well. So, I look at that second line with Trocheck and Lafreniere getting run over without Panarin. I look at that third line of Brodzinski and Cooley getting run over. That Fox-Lindgren pairing, holy shit, that's got to stop, man. I know we harp on it. It's getting worse. This is gangrene at this point where you didn't clean the infection at the time and now you got to cut off the leg. I kind of have a little interest in that Pittsburgh top line here. 16,700. I would rather play them than Rangers too. That's for sure. There are some other lines in that price range that we might want to get to, one specifically in the late game. We'll talk about it. But honestly, there's not a lot in that 15 to 18K range here tonight. It's basically this Pittsburgh line, the Rangers second line on the other side, or one of the lines from Dallas, and that's it. So if you need a line in that price range, I think Pittsburgh 1 is perfectly fine. I will also shout out the Pittsburgh depth, because I don't think that the Rangers depth is very good, honestly. Hayes and Tomasino this season, 71 shot attempts for, 52 against per 60 in 95 minutes together, 4.1 expected goals per 60 minutes. They don't get a ton of ice time, but there are expensive Colorado and expensive Edmonton stacks later on the board. And I think that Hayes might end up being their third most used forward here tonight. So like a Hayes Tomasino too, man, I think makes a lot of sense if you're stacking expensive Colorado, expensive Edmonton. So I would go Rangers 1, Pittsburgh 1, Pittsburgh 3, and that's basically my interest out of this game.
Yeah. The one concern I do have with Pittsburgh 1 is is Raquel going to play the game like he always does, or he's going to think about what he has to do because he's in a different spot?
I mean, that's a fair point, yeah. But at the same time, these guys are probably going to have to play pretty heavy minutes. And it's eventually at a point, if you're 16,700 and you're going to play 20 minutes on a 5-game slate, you should probably give them some pretty heavy consideration.
Yeah. And if you have ever been a fan of the Rangers and you want to shed a tear, go to Natural Stat Trick, look at the wowies Adam Fox has with Ryan Lindgren.
And it's not even just this season, it's last season too. It's crazy.
Go look at their history together. You'd want to take a detour off the nearest bridge. New York Islanders, speaking of taking detours off a bridge, 2.4 total. Heading into Winnipeg, the Jets have a 3.1. Every time Winnipeg's on the slate, I have to crack up because there was a 1.5-year stretch. This guy made a joke about there not being an airport in Winnipeg, and I legit thought that you had to fly into somewhere else and then drive into Winnipeg. So good on you. Anyway, this game kind of sucks. There's so many things wrong with the Islanders team, but they're running Horvat, Lee, Duclair, Nelson, Palmieri, Sipelkoff. Winnipeg, status quo here. We just talked about the Pittsburgh team without Crosby. Now, obviously, Matt Barzal is not a Crosby-level offensive player, but he is probably their best offensive player. At least, arguably. So, you throw Duclair on that top line instead of Barzal, and unsurprisingly, in a small sample, that line is getting absolutely run over. And they're coming in at 11.3% with a 7% top 2 stack. I don't really want to play Horvat here. They have the lowest total on the slate. They're going into Winnipeg, and it's probably Connor Hellebuck without their best offensive player. I'm out on that line. Nelson, Palmieri, Sipelkoff is at least interesting because they've been good in a large sample this year. And they're going to see probably the softest landing spot at 5-on-5, that Nemestikov, Perfidi, Ehlers line. They're not awful defensively, but they're not great. And, they're fully correlated on the second unit. You still would be stacking against Hellebuck, which sucks, but they're 12,400 coming in at 2.6% projected. They're a filler line. They're going to play pretty decent minutes, and they have a long history of playing well at 5-on-5. So if I'm going to play the Islanders, it is that Nelson, Palmieri, Sipelkoff line. On the Winnipeg side, I don't know, man. This dynamic pricing is kind of silly, making them 18,600. They were up to almost 22,000 not too long ago. It's a good price. They're fully correlated. The bottom 6 of the Islanders suck. It is Sorokin, which is a problem. He's been really good of late. Also, the Islanders don't take a ton of penalties, and Winnipeg 1's kind of a power play merchant line. right? They only have 2.8 expected goals per 60 at 5-on-5, 3.3 actual. As Cliffy alluded to, Pittsburgh 1 has a better projection than they do. But, I don't mind taking a stab at them because they're coming in under 10% on a 5-game slate, and they have a 3.1 total. Like, the Islanders are the WWE franchise of the NHL. The storyline after storyline, they're a mess. At that price, I'll take a stab at them. Like in single entry, I don't think I'll get there, but like if I'm making 20 lineups, I'm going to have Winnipeg 1. Winnipeg 2, they're coming in pretty heavily over-owned here, 10.1% projected, and they're $900 more than Nelson Palmieri-Sipakov line. Like, I'd rather just go play Nelson Palmieri-Sipakov for a fifth of the ownership. Like, when Sorokin's on, he's one of the best goalies in the NHL. Hellebuyck is already one of the best goalies in the NHL. This could be a tough matchup on both sides. So really the only line I have a ton of interest in, and it's really not a ton, but like I would consider them in single entry, more likely to get to them in MME, is Winnipeg 1.
Yeah, I'll start on the Islanders side here. Like, we keep saying like one of the spots where you can get to Winnipeg is on the penalty kill, and the Islanders just straight up have one of the worst power plays in the league. So, that's a tick against them immediately. They haven't been, the top line hasn't been good with Duclair, but Horvat and Lee have generally been pretty good in general without either Brock Nelson or Matt Barzal on their line. Like, just Lee and Horvat without either Barzal or Nelson, 61 shot attempts, 3 expected goals, 3.6 actual goals per 60 minutes. Now, Duclair the problem is like he's not having a very good season. Like, this is a guy who I think for years was kind of underrated, but he didn't play that well last year, and now this year he's kind of almost worse. Like, he's basically like fourth line status. Whereas there was a long stretch where he was like a second line, a good or a great third liner. He's not that, and he hasn't been for about 18 months. And that's a little bit of a concern for me with that Islanders top line. They do have a solid projection, but it's a 5-game slate. The Islanders top line has negative leverage, and they're on the road in Winnipeg facing Connor Hellebuyck. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's not like there's any shortage of cheap lines. Like, between 12,400 and 14,500, there's like 10 different lines on this slate that you can pick from. So I don't know why you would go to one of the chalkier ones on the road against Connor Hellebuyck. So like, I'm out on Islanders 1. Islanders 2, you're right. Like, they were pretty good basically up until Thanksgiving, went on a little bit of a slide. They haven't played a ton. I was looking since Christmas, 65 minutes together for that Islanders second line, 77 shot attempts, 2.9 expected goals, only 0.9 actual goals. So they're shooting 2.5%. Like, if they're shooting 10%, they'd be like an elite offensive line. So that's why I kind of have interest in them. Nelson Palmieri and Sipakov have generally been good together this year. They're coming in way less ownership, 2.6% against a 2% top 2 stack. It's only $1,800 less, but that $1,800, when you're talking about maybe playing like an expensive McKinnon or an expensive McDavid line or Edmonton power play or whatever, you're talking about those kind of stacks, $1,800 matters a lot. So I think I'm with you on Islanders 2. It's my favorite line on that side. I'll shout out Islanders 3, just in case people are playing like Colorado 1 plus Makar or Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman plus Bouchard. Like, at that point, you do need those $9,000 and $10,000 lines. Holmstrom, Pajos, Zikas up to 90 minutes together this season, 65 shot attempts, 3 expected goals per 60. Now, only 2 actual goals per 60 scored, which kind of makes sense when you consider it's a line of Simon Holmstrom, Jean-Gabriel Pajot, and Casey Zizekas. Not expecting them to shoot like 12% or something like that. But they have been able to control the play. And that Winnipeg third line, doesn't really get used in shutdown matchups without Adam Lowry in the lineup, and they haven't been that good without Adam Lowry on that line. So I think it's a matchup that might actually favor Islanders 3. So if you are playing like Edmonton or Colorado power play stack along with Pittsburgh 3, I think Islanders 3 is one to consider because you only needed a goal and an assist. That's right. Like Pajot gets a goal assisted by Holmstrom. You have a 2-man stack. That's all you need from them. So I think they're fine, but I like the Islanders depth more than the top line. Winnipeg is where things get interesting. 18,600 is too cheap for that line for what they've done this year. Like, I kind of get it in the sense where they are doing, that dynamic pricing or whatever. Mark Scheifele is tied for 3rd in the league in goals, and Kyle Connor is 5th. You know what I mean? Like, this line has scored a lot of goals this year. The Islanders don't take a lot of penalties, but the Winnipeg power play is great. You know, what worries me more than anything is Sorokin. He wasn't very good to start the season, okay? At least not by Sorokin standards, certainly. Since Christmas, the only goaltender in the league with a higher goals saved above expected than Sorokin is Logan Thompson. And the only goalie to make at least 12 starts since Christmas and have a higher save percentage than Ilya Sorokin is Logan Thompson. Sorokin's literally been one of the best goalies in the league for like 7 weeks. And he has been so good for so long. I got to think that the first, half of the season or whatever was kind of the aberration. And what he's doing now is more what we're used to from him. That's what worries me from the Winnipeg perspective is like Sorokin can save 32 out of 33 pretty easily here tonight. So I do like Winnipeg 1. It's more of like, if you want to get away from the chalkier Colorado and Edmonton stacks, I think this is a spot to go, especially if you want to save some money off the Rangers. But all honesty, I'd rather play the Rangers top line for an extra 2,200. I know it's more expensive, but they have nearly double the top 2 stack of Winnipeg 1. So I have no real issue with Winnipeg 1. I think I'd rather just play the Rangers if I want to get away from chalkier Colorado, Edmonton. Winnipeg 2 is carrying a lot of ownership. They have been playing pretty well since they got put back together January 1st. 4 expected goals, 70 shot attempts per 60. Perfitti's on a nice little streak here. Ehlers is almost 3 shots per game over his last 10 games. I mean, they're fine to play, but honestly, I think in this game, I'm avoiding the more expensive top lines, and I'm looking more at the depth. So for me, I would probably go Winnipeg 2, Islanders 2, Islanders 3, and staying away from the top lines.
Concur for the I have no interest in the Islanders top line, but Winnipeg, there's just so many good options to spend up with, so I get it. Nashville Predators with a 3.4 total heading into Chicago. Whatever that team is has a 2.6. We are a team. They're not really. Why did this top line has so much ownership for Chicago? Bedard, Donato, Slaggert, Teravainen, Nazar, Mikheyev, Bertuzzi, Foligno, Kurashev. How? The team's awful. Bedard and Donato have played 155 minutes together this season. Unsurprisingly, getting caved. You throw Landard, Slaggert into the mix at 13.7, and all of a sudden they have 14.4% projected ownership. It doesn't matter who they're going out against. It would be a bad matchup for them against the Stamkos line. It'd be a bad matchup for them against the O'Reilly line. It'd be a bad matchup against them for the Svechkov line. I didn't even consider Chicago in single entry here today. This ownership is preposterous. If it's going to be even close to that, I'm out on Chicago. If you have a one-off of Bedard somewhere, that's fine because he is Connor Bedard. People saying, "Oh, he's a bust." who's he played with in his career? Like, Tyler Bertuzzi is the best line mate he's ever had in his career, and they can't even keep him there with him for some reason. So, whatever. That franchise is a joke. But if you happen to get a Bedard one-off or something, that's fine. Nashville side, way more interesting, and there's 3 different playable lines here at 3 different price points. So they called up Joakim Kemmel, and he practiced. I forget where he practiced, but Marchessault had the day off. And that's why if you look at some lineup sites, the lines are a bit wonky. But what I'm expecting is Forsberg, Stamkos, Marchessault, Nyquist, O'Reilly. I feel like Steve Carell from Bruce Almighty when I do that. It's really disrespectful, and I apologize, but I don't know how to say that name. And then the third line of Novak, Svechkov, and then Kemmel. Now, I do really, really like Nashville 1 here. The problem is they're 22,200, right? And if you look at the pricing on the slate, because DraftKings is like, yeah, let's try dynamic pricing in the middle of the season for some goddamn reason. They're $1,800 more than Colorado 1. They're $2,000 more than Edmonton 1. They're $1,400 more than the Rangers top line, and they're $3,600 more than Winnipeg 1. That is the issue in itself. If you want to spend up for them, I think it's fine. But in single entry, it's just really hard to prioritize that when you can save some salary for better lines and you can go use that elsewhere. Now, the other thing is, like, I know Dickinson's out, so maybe that affects their penalty kill. But, like, Chicago's awful at 5-on-5. So, like, I don't even think you need to go Nashville 1 here. Like, the O'Reilly Nyquist line, 3.5 expected goals for in an 85-minute sample. Tommy Novak and Fedor Svechkov, 3.9 expected goals per 60 in a 111-minute sample. So, like, where these lines aren't getting a ton of ownership and Chicago 1's getting a ton for some reason, like, if you need salary savings, I'll do a 2-man of Novak Svechkov, O'Reilly Nyquist, long before I consider Chicago 1. I think those 2 that I just mentioned are perfectly fine. There's nothing that worries me on the Chicago side. Every matchup is an advantageous one for Nashville here. So, like, you can go Nashville 1 because they're fully correlated. It's an excellent spot. The PK without Dickinson's probably going to hurt. But, there's other better lines that are cheaper. So, like, I don't mind going down the lineup here to a Novak Svechkov or an O'Reilly Nyquist. So, I honestly think there's 3 playable lines on the Nashville side, depending on what you want to do out on Chicago.
Yeah, I was looking at their games earlier this season because I think this is the 3rd matchup between the 2 teams. Nashville only won the first one 3-2. The second one, Nashville won 3-2 in a shootout. I was looked to see what was going on, and it's because Chicago goaltending put up a .934 save percentage in those 2 games. They saved 70 out of 75 shots that they faced. Arvid Soderblom has had some pretty good games. It's Peter Mrazek in net tonight, so maybe that changes things a little. Chicago needs their goalies to put up a .940 save percentage or they're going to lose. Like, that's just kind of the way that goes. So, obviously Nashville is in a great spot. Nashville is really expensive. I don't wonder. I don't think I've done it yet this year. Is like, this feels like a spot for a Josh stack. A 6-man on DraftKings. That's a 6-man or 6 skater stack. Use the top line plus Brady Shea or something, plus like Novak and Svechkov, or the top line plus Ryan O'Reilly. If you want to throw in Roman Josi, might be a little bit expensive, but Ryan O'Reilly plus Shea plus Svechkov or Nyquist or something like that. Like this might be a spot for a Josh Stack, because Jason Dickinson, he is the guy that you avoid for shutdown matchups going into Chicago. Like he is their, like, I think Teuvo Teravainen has technically better expected goals against metrics on Chicago this season. Teravainen, think it's one of those situations where if you look at what they've typically done in their history, like I would still take Dickinson defensively. You take that out of the lineup, you put in Philip Kurashev, like there is no matchup to worry about. The Chicago top line, 71 shot attempts against for Bedard and Donato. Nazar and Bertuzzi in their minutes together without Connor Bedard, 65 shot attempts against. Like you said, I think the penalty kill is going to get worse. I have no problem with Nashville 1, but like you said, at 22,200, I'd be kind of tempted to just go play some sort of Colorado or Edmonton stack instead. I think for me, if I play Nashville, I do like a power play stack, or I do a full 6-man stack or something like that, and hope Edmonton, Colorado ends up a 3-1 game or something like that, and the scoring spread out a little bit. What I will say is, as you mentioned, Novak and Svechkov have been really good together this season. 72 shot attempts per 60 and over 110 minutes together. 3.7 expected goals, 2.7 actual goals per 60. Kemmel is not in the player pool, so if he's on that line, you don't even have to worry about him. Going up against, probably the Kurashev. Like Kurashev is terrible. There's a reason why he hasn't been playing. Him replacing Dickinson is going to make that line like immeasurably, actually not immeasurably. We're going to measure it pretty well. Going to make them considerably worse. So I think it's a really good matchup for Nashville 3. Like Tommy Novak, 19 shots in his last 10 games. It's not a lot, but this is a guy where like there's a lot of stretches in his career where he's at like 1.5 shots per game. The fact that he's closer to 2, the fact that him and Svechkov have played well. I do like Nashville 3, at least a 2-man of Novak and Svechkov if you want to play them with Edmonton, Colorado, and all that. But I have a hard time not getting to Nashville here tonight because there's just no concern about any, like I said, the only concern is that Mrazek pulls a 940 or 950 and saves a pile of shots here tonight, which Chicago's done a lot this year. But if you want to avoid Edmonton, Colorado ownership, I think Nashville's the way to go. On the Chicago side, I will give a shout out to Donato and Bedard here for this reason. 2.6 expected goals, 2.8 actual goals per 60 in their time together at 5-on-5. That's not great. On the Chicago Blackhawks, it's spectacular. You know what I mean? Like almost inconceivable how good they are offensively compared to the rest of the trash that they have to play with. And they're probably going to have to be used in a shutdown role. And that means going up against the Stamkos line. And that Stamkos line has not been good defensively since in the new year. 75 shot attempts against, 3 expected goals against, 4.4 actual goals against. And the Chicago top power play unit has been actually good, riding a bit hot by shooting percentage, but they're actually scoring. So you get 2 guys on the top power play unit. They're coming in over-owned. I'd probably take out Slager and put in Bertuzzi, or take out Slager and put in Teravainen. Like, I don't think Slager plays more than 11 or 12 minutes. Maybe he gets lucky. Who knows? But I'd probably go more a Chicago power play stack. On the Nashville side, or not necessarily like a full stack. I think Bedard Donato is fine as a 2-man, but if you want to take off Slager, put on one of Bertuzzi or Teravainen, that's okay. But it's clearly the Nashville side I like best here. It's just a matter of, do I power play stack? Do I just play some depth lines and go play Edmonton, Colorado, or Rangers or Pittsburgh? Or, do I 6-man stack? I think those are just the only real questions here.
Yeah. Just play the whole top 9 if you could, really. But you can't. But let's get to one of the best hockey games that you can watch probably tonight. Probably the best one you can watch. Colorado Avs with a 2.9 total heading into Edmonton. The Oilers have the biggest total on the night, 3.7. Colorado won last night in Calgary. Now, this is their last game before the 4 Nations.
Can I just say real quick? I mentioned it to you in a message earlier today that I was praising Michael Backlund yesterday on the show and how he had been really good at shutting down a lot of top players. A lot of top players like Pasternak and Matthews, et cetera, this season. And then McKinnon and Natchez go into Calgary, and Michael Backlund has his worst expected goal share in 227 regular season games.
That's like almost 3 seasons.
I swear to God, he turned. It was like facing like the San Jose fourth line every time Colorado's top line stepped on the ice, and they're facing Michael Backlund, who's legitimately one of the best shutdown centers of this generation. It is bonkers what happened.
Yeah, we were talking about at the top of the show, him, McKinnon, and Netchus in 111 minutes, 4.9 expected goals per 60. They have a 60-minute sample with Arturi Lehkonen as well, 5.84 expected goals per 60. 93 shot attempts per 60. Like, these numbers don't even make sense.
One thing I will say, sorry to cut you off again, but Natchez has played 7 games with Colorado. Only one of those games is against the team that's currently occupying a playoff spot, and it's Vancouver, who I think is 8th, like second wild card in the West. They haven't played a top 12 team in the NHL yet with Natchez in the lineup. Until tonight.
Now, those numbers are ludicrous anyway, and they're shooting 5.5%. So the point I was going to make, it's their last game before the 4 Nations break, and Scott Wedgwood is hurt. So it would not shock me to see Mackenzie Blackwood go again here tonight. If not, it'll be Trent Miner. Trent?
Yeah.
Trent. Yeah. Who I think he got 1 start earlier this year. So just keep an eye on that. I don't really like these Edmonton 5-on-5 lines. McDavid, Hyman, Arvidsson, Draisaitl, Skinner, Podkolzin, Nugent Hopkins, Brown, Janmark. Like, they're trying to lengthen the lineup, and by doing so, they're shortening it, I guess. Because, like, I don't know. Obviously, Draisaitl and Podkolzin have really, really good numbers together, but Skinner's having an awful season. I don't know why they took Arvidsson off that line to go play with McDavid and Hyman. In a really small sample, they haven't been great together. I'm not worried about it. McDavid, Hyman could, pick me up and carry me to 3 expected goals at some point. So, like, I'm not super concerned about it. I just worry when you're standing on the train tracks and you have McKinnon, Netchus, and Lehkonen staring you down. That is not ideal. The 3 fastest players in hockey are in this game by speed bursts, over 22 miles an hour. McDavid, McKinnon, and Netchus. What to do in this game is really, really interesting. Like, recency bias, all the bias is going to be like, in my brain is like, go play Colorado 1, Colorado 1, Colorado 1. They're just disgusting, and they are. They are back-to-back on the road, and they play ridiculous minutes. Now, it is the last game before a 2-week break. All these guys are in the 4 Nations Cup, though. If anyone doesn't give a crap, it's Jared Bednar. Be like, back-to-back, 31 minutes. You got it. So, like, from that standpoint, I'm not worried at all about their minutes here. I think there's some merit to going to Edmonton here because they are back-to-back on the road. You're either going to get Blackwood on a back-to-back or an AHL goalie. I'm not a huge fan of these lines, but the thing is, like, if Colorado gets out of the gate fast, you're gonna see McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman play together, and that's why, like, you kind of just prioritize those guys together anyway. Because I have no faith that Jeff Skinner is going to make it on the second line. I have more faith that, like, McDavid, Hyman, and Nugent Hopkins will play together, and they'll move Arvidsson to the second line than Jeff Skinner making it through the whole game there. So, like, I'm going to prioritize the big boys on Edmonton because I don't think these lines stick. Like McDavid Hyman is a fair bet, obviously. If I'm playing Edmonton, I'm building around Draisaitl and McDavid. It's just breaking news, but that's just what I'm going to do because if Colorado scores 2 quick goals, Edmonton's going to completely annihilate their lines. It happens all the time when they're losing. You'll see McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman just play for a period and a half. They get back in the game. They go back to the old lines. They give up a goal, and then they go back to McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman. It's just what happens. So I'm prioritizing those guys. On the flip side, Colorado won, obviously in play. The price has gone down $2,000 since yesterday. Net just had a 40 DK point game yesterday. His price dropped like $1,000. So I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. I worry that my brain automatically is just going to go to recency bias of Colorado won, but I definitely think there's a lot of merit to going to Edmonton here.
Yeah. I'll start on the Edmonton side here. I can't believe you have the balls to slander Jeff Skinner in front of me. Like, first of all, how dare you?
Second of all, he's having a terrible season.
It's not that bad, actually. This was yesterday. I wrote about it on one of my social media accounts. But there was a really nice defensive play he made in the game before where he didn't pinch for a loose puck and backed off and then picked off the pass, the breakout pass, and fed it to Draisaitl, and Draisaitl scored immediately. I think it was their second goal. Anyways, by evolving hockey's expected goals against metrics, this is Jeff Skinner's best defensive season in 4 years. And still not a good defensive season, don't get me wrong, but his best defensive season in 4 years. He's at 0.99 goals per 60 minutes at 5-on-5. As of yesterday, it might have changed because I think Eichel scored at 5-on-5 yesterday. As of yesterday, it was higher than Jack Eichel, Brock Nelson, Nikolai Ehlers, David Pastrnak, Jack Hughes, Jake Gensel, Jason Robertson, and Artemi Panarin. His scoring chance assists, like how often he assists on a teammate's scoring chance of 5-on-5, is third among Oilers forwards behind only Draisaitl and McDavid. I think there's been a lot of good here. It's just taken him some time to get used to playing with Draisaitl and McDavid. Like people, Skinner played with Tage Thompson. That's got to help a little bit, but you're playing with two guys that play completely different styles. Like Skinner and Draisaitl, 80 minutes together this season, 68 shot attempts, 3.1 expected goals. Like, that's not that bad. Like you said, Draisaitl and Paul Colson have been able to carry just about anybody. So, that second line at 15,100, 16% ownership, coming in over-owned, I would be really hesitant to leave off both McDavid and Hyman, though, for this reason, is that if it's Trent Miner starting, like the Colorado penalty kills kind of relying on their goaltending right now. Like since January 1st, the only teams giving up more shots per minute on the penalty kill than Colorado are Detroit, Calgary, and San Jose. They've been relying on 930 penalty kill save percentage. If you have Trent Miner in net, I'm not sure that's going to happen against this Edmonton power play. So I'd be really hesitant to leave off both McDavid and Hyman. So, like a McDavid, Draisaitl, Skinner, McDavid, Hyman, Arvidsson, Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman, Skinner, like something like that. McDavid and Draisaitl. Add in, Nugent Hopkins down on the third line because he's not like Nugent Hopkins. He's not carrying any ownership here tonight. Now, 2.4% for Brian Nugent Hopkins on a 5-game slate in what's not a bad power play matchup. 40% of Nugent Hopkins' points over the last season and a half have come on the power play. So, like, if he does anything, it's probably going to be with the man advantage. So you can throw in RNH, even though he's overpriced at 5,200. I think there are a lot of things to like about Edmonton here. I'm not sure I would just straight up like 3-man stack the top line or 3-man stack the second line. I would probably stack across lines because this is a good power play spot. But yeah, I think the total show it. I like the Edmonton side a lot better. it also worries me that Colorado's price has gone down 2K. And this might be the best 5-on-5 offensive line in the league. If they're like 80% of what they've shown together so far this Natchez and McKinnon, what they've shown together so far, if they're 80% of that, they're still the best 5-on-5 line in the league. So like I have a lot of concern about not going back to Colorado, but Edmonton's generally been fine defensively. Edmonton's not taking many penalties. That's the big thing for me. 2.1 times shorthanded per game since the start of January. I think it's the 6th lowest rate in the league. If you go all the way back to Thanksgiving, it's the 2nd lowest rate in the league of time shorthanded. So if Colorado has to get there basically completely at 5-on-5, it's a lot to ask for a line over 20K. They can do it. They are one of the lines that can do it. If I was 20 maxing tonight, I would certainly have 4 or 5 Colorado. But if I have to pick between one or the other, I'm looking for some sort of Edmonton stack here. It would be nice to know if Trent Miner's starting or not before lock, but I don't think we're going to get that lucky.
No. It pains me. I'll apologize for the Skinner.
I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. He's not having a great season or anything. He's not the Jeff Skinner of 2 years ago or 3 years ago or whatever. But I think the fact that he's not playing power play and not playing a ton of minutes regardless it's keeping his production kind of mediocre. But if you look at what he's done on a per minute basis, it's actually been pretty good.
Yeah. I just wish he's having a better season so someone could just tell Mike Harrington to shut the fuck up about how he's having a bad season.
I mean, anyway, with a little bit of luck, Skinner might get to 20 goals this year, and he doesn't have a power play goal yet. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. Oh, let's get to this last doozy of a game. Dallas Stars with a 2.7 total heading into Los Angeles. The Kings have a 2.7. Big save Dave going for the Kings. Great, grand, wonderful. No yelling on the bus. But here's the thing. We were talking about the Kings-Canadiens game the other morning. How the Kings started so strong, right? The Kings had a 60.2% Corsi for percentage for the game. Drew Doughty in 23 and a half minutes. It was actually 19 minutes and 31 seconds at 5-on-5. His Corsi for percentage was 42%. Like he got thrust into a role that he's not ready for yet because Mikey Anderson got hurt. Mikey Anderson is their best defensive defenseman, and it's not close. Darcy Kemper, their best goalie. It's not close. You throw those two into the mix tonight, no Mikey Anderson, Dave Riddick in net. You have to consider some stars here. The thing is, like, which line do you go to, right? I think for me, but the thing is, we don't know the lines. Right?
I was going to say, it's not which line do you go to, it's what are the goddamn lines.
Yeah, that's the problem. And I guess, like, the safest thing you could do is play Hintz and Robertson. But, like, dynamic pricing has Robertson more expensive than Natchez, more expensive than Hyman. You know what I mean? So it's just like, what are we doing? You know? It's like Wyatt Johnston, Ben probably are going to be together. Like, I don't know. The Stars have been mixing and matching since they traded for Granlund because they really do want to move Wyatt back to center, but they're struggling to find combinations that work. So, like, you really don't know the lines. I would assume Hintz and Robertson will be together, but that two-man is 12-6. Like, the two-man of Lehkonen and Netchus is 12,000 even. So, if we knew the concrete lines, it would be easier to break down where I wanted to go on Dallas because without Mikey, with Riddick in net, like, I want to have some stars here. It's just not exactly sure what the lines are going to be. And the two-man that I'm pretty sure is going to be together is dynamically priced to the moon for some reason. Like, there's no reason for Robertson to be 7,500 here tonight. It was like Clayton Keller last night. But I don't know. Like, I do have interest in Dallas. I want to know lines, and we're not going to know them. Now, on the flip side, I think the line that I would want to go to is Fiala, Byfield, LaFerriere. Losing Miro Heiskanen. Oh, look at Clayton. Clayton, I was yelling at him earlier, and I didn't even realize because I wasn't reading what he was saying. But he said, coach's statement a few minutes ago has Robertson, Hintz, Stankoven, Marchment, Duchesne, Granlund, Ben Johnston, Dadonov. What a legend Clayton is. His bit in the Discord right now is probably one of the funniest things. I don't want to say what it is because he's been keeping it going. But when someone catches on to it, I do have to talk about it because it's one of my favorite things he's been doing. But with that being the case, I think I would go to Hintz, Robertson, Stankoven at 16,600. They're coming in at 2.5% projected. Yes, Robertson's super expensive. Whatever. Stankoven's 4K. They're going to see a bunch of that Gavrikov, Drew Doughty pairing. And like Gavrikov's a good defender, but most of that has been with Mikey Anderson. With Drew Doughty, like I'm expecting Drew Doughty to improve a little bit. Like he is not the guy he was 4 or 5 years ago, but like he is coming off a massive layoff. So like, excuse me, I think you take advantage of it while Dallas is really low owned. Robertson, Hintz, Stankoven for me at 2.5%. You want to go to Johnston, Ben, 3.4%, fine. On the Kings side, I will say Duchesne, Granlund, Marchment at 12.9 as a filler, 4.5% projected. Like we talked about the Blackhawks top line at 14%, these Islanders lines at chalk or whatever. I don't mind them at 12.9 as a filler at 4.5%. The one Kings line that does interest me is Fiala, Byfield, LaFerriere, 14.3. Miro Heiskanen's out. That's a big loss for them on the blue line. The the Fiala line has been really, really good at 5-on-5. You get Fiala and LaFerriere on the top power play unit. The dynamic pricing has Byfield up to 5K for some reason, but that's fine. They have been really, really good. They'll probably see that Duchesne line. Like Duchesne and Marchment have a long history of good numbers this season, last season. Most of that is with Sagan. I don't think Granlund's an awful comp to Sagan right now. Sagan's probably a better offensive player, but like defensively, they're probably similar. It would be Fiala, Byfield, LaFerriere for me. Robertson, Hintz, Stankoven. I'm fine with Duchesne, Granlund, Marchment.
Yeah, just to that point about Drew Doughty, he's played 4 games so far. In those 4 games, he's been on the ice for 100 shot attempts against at 5-on-5. If you look at his per minute rate of shot attempts against at 5-on-5 in those 4 games, it's like Cody Ceci, Henry Thrun in San Jose territory. Like, yeah, he will get better. And, 3 of those games were on the road against Florida, Tampa Bay, Carolina. So we'll give him a break. But it's not like Dallas is an easy matchup. You know what I mean? And like you said, he didn't play well against Montreal. In fact, I told you I was watching that game. And some point in the first period, the broadcasters are talking about how a steady presence and how great Drew Doughty is and all that. And literally half a second later, he gave the puck away to Jake Evans. Jake Evans got a breakaway, and the Kings had to take a penalty off of it. He's not looked good. I've watched 2 of their 4 games. He's looked bad, like just bad. And the numbers back that up. If he gets better, that's one thing. Is it going to be tonight? I don't know. That's why I have interest in that Robertson, Hintz, Stankoven line is because he's going to go out against that line. Like, they put him out for like half his shifts in that Montreal game were against Suzuki and Caulfield. So that Dallas top line is going to get a lot of fairly easy matchups here, unless Doughty somehow improves by 50% in 2 days. I honestly don't mind that Dallas top line here. 16,600. The big reason is like there's not a lot in that price range. I'd rather play them than the Rangers. I would probably still rather play Pittsburgh, but it's closer to a coin flip for me. Pittsburgh top line has a higher top 2 stack, but I think Dallas 1 is very much in play. Like Robertson, he's low-key been on an unreal tear. 8 goals, 14 points, and 35 shots in his last 10 games. And it goes back longer than that. Like his last 25 games, he's been really good. So I don't mind that. If you want to take off Stankoven and put on Johnston for additional power play exposure, I think that's fine for this reason. One, if they get down, they're probably going to put Johnston on that top line anyway. 2, they're on the power play together. 3, Johnston is probably going to get the most ice time of any Dallas forward. 4, the Dallas power play has been better with Thomas Harley running it than Miro Heiskanen. If you look at, it's like a 10% or 16%, shot improvement in shot attempts with Harley. The goals go up as well. And the Kings have been taking a lot more penalties over the last 5 or 6 weeks than they were the 5 or 6 weeks before that. In fact, it's closer to what they were doing earlier in the season when they were one of the most penalized teams in the league. So if you're looking for a mid-price line, I think Dallas 1 for me. It's the only line I really have any interest in. On the Kings side, I agree with you with that Fiala line. They've just been unbelievable together. This isn't a matchup for the Kings where I'm looking to stack because of power plays, players or anything like that. But you do get 2 guys on the top power play unit. 78 shot attempts, 3 expected goals, 4.9 actual goals per 60. All 3 guys skate 17 to 19 minutes. Fiala's been up at 20 sometimes. Lafreniere has 18 shots in 6 games since coming back. That line only coming in with 5.5% ownership. They're in that price range, with Chicago that we talked about earlier, that is coming in with a fair bit of ownership. They're in that price range with Winnipeg that is coming in with a fair bit of ownership, with the Islanders top line that is coming in with a fair bit of ownership. I'd rather play this Kings line than all of them. So Kings 2, Dallas 1 is where my interest is in this game. Pretty sure you're on mute.
Rookie move on my part. I was just mumbling about random garbage. So let's talk about some defensemen here. Top of the board, Yossi, Makar, Bouchard. Kel Makar was 7,900 yesterday. He had 28.5 DK points. He's now 7,100. I guess that's something we're going to have to get used to. I don't know why they decided to do this in the middle of the season when they could have just been like, hey, we're going to try out this dynamic pricing in the preseason. No, let's do it now. I think for me, it would be, obviously all 3 of those guys up top are in play. I think I prefer Makar of all of them, but they're all in play depending on what you want to do. Tony DeAngelo up to 5,500 is kind of hilarious, but he just does not leave the ice, apparently. Adam Fox is in a good spot. But, I think it would be the 3, Bouchard, Makar, Yossi, or I'm going down to, Harley or something.
Yeah. By stochastics point per dollar of the 3 expensive defensemen, Yossi, Bouchard, Makar. Bouchard edges out Yossi slightly. Yossi does have the higher overall projection. I would probably rather play Yossi here tonight, but it is a fair enough coin flip depending on how much salary you want to spend. We liked Makar yesterday. I don't like him as much today just because the Oilers don't take many penalties. Like him having to get there all at 5-on-5 for 7,100. That's really a lot to ask. So for me, I think it's Yossi then Bouchard. The mid-price range, I don't know why he's doing it, but Darnell Nurse just won't stop shooting the puck. 17 shots in his last 5 games. He's at 2.6 shots per game, which is a 3-year high. He's projecting pretty well. I don't mind Nurse. Thomas Harley is the interesting guy for me because he's not a guy that typically puts up great peripherals. He played 26 minutes in their last game, 24 minutes a couple games before that, 27 before that, 25 before that. It's a lot of ice time with top power play status for under 5K. So I don't mind Harley in the mid-price range, honestly. Also, shout out Seth Jones, just because he also plays a lot of minutes. He puts up peripherals, and the Chicago power play has generally been fine. Like, I would rather play Harley, but I think Seth Jones in that mid-price range is okay. Obviously, Adam Fox, in case the Rangers just beat the piss out of Pittsburgh here tonight, which is possible. Cheaper guys, Esa Lindell's getting a lot of ice time with Heiskanen out. I think he makes a lot of sense against the Kings. Same thing with Adam Pelech. Alex Vlasic is all the way down to 3K for Chicago. You know, this is a guy that was in the mid fours at times. Like a month ago, he was 4,600. Now he's at 3K. Seems perfectly reasonable to me. Yes, he's been on a downturn, but it's like that Rasmus Anderson thing, where Anderson was like $3,000 cheaper all of a sudden. It's like, well, at a certain point, even if he's on a downswing, got to kind of play him. Vladislav Gavrikov, I think, is fine for his price. He's projecting well. For the cheap guys, like Sam Malinsky scored yesterday. Still no Josh Manson. Malinsky played 19 minutes. I don't like Malinsky when he was playing 14, 15 minutes. If he's going to play 18, 19, I think he's in play for under 3K. Joel Edmondson, with Anderson out, has been getting some reasonable minutes. 23, 25 and a half, 24 in his last 3 games. So Joel Edmondson is probably the other super cheap guy I don't mind here tonight.
Yeah. Let's talk about some goalies here. It's actually a range where, like, I don't mind spending up here. Like, Saros has shutout equity for Nashville. Igor against the Crosby-less Penguins, Hellebuck against the Islanders. Like, I think those are fine. Like, I don't think I'd go to 8,400 for Saros. I think 8,100 Hellebuck makes the most sense there. Sorokin at 7,300 interests me. I guess, like, if you have to do it, Mrazek, and hope like he goes like 36 of 40. Like he as long as he gets the save bonus there, he doesn't need to win to pay off the salary. And, you know, Nashville, for a good stretch at the beginning of the season, had trouble scoring. So who knows? Anything can happen in any game. But I think I'll be between, you know, Shesterkin, Hellebuck, or Sorokin tonight.
Yeah, the 2 expensive goalies for me are Hellebuck and Igor, in that order. By point per dollar on Stochastic tonight, they are 1 and 2. Shesterkin has a slightly higher overall projection. Hellebuck 1 by point per dollar, Shesterkin 2, Saros in a distant third amongst the expensive goalies. So Hellebuck and Shesterkin for the expensive guys for me. I was thinking about playing Kemper. He's not starting. I'm certainly not playing Dave Riddick. So Ilya Sorokin is really the only cheap goalie that I have a lot of interest in tonight. But I will say, I kind of agree with your take on Mrazek. It's like, if I was playing 20 lineups, I'd probably have a couple with Mrazek. In a single entry, I think I'd rather just play Sorokin. But we've seen Mrazek steal more than his fair share of games. And in the right kind of game, he could still give up like 4 goals and be the top scoring fantasy goalie on the night. You know what I mean? So I don't mind Mrazek, but for me, it's Shesterkin, Hellebuck, then Sorokin if I want a lot cheaper. If I want to get even cheaper, then Mrazek, but I'd seriously rather play Sorokin here.
Well, here's the thing with Mrazek, right? I'll just give you easy numbers. If he saves 35 of 40 on DraftKings, that's 10 DK points. I think you take that if you need the salary. So just something to chew on.
I mean, I think he's faced at least 35 shots in a third of his games. So he has a reasonable chance of seeing at least 35 shots, which, you know, obviously brings the save bonus into play.
Oh, yeah. I mean, in his last 5 starts, he's seen 36, 35, 48, 27, and 44. So,
it's kind of unbelievable. 5th most shots against per minute of any goalie, or 3rd most shots against per minute of any regular starting goalie in the league. The only guys higher are Lucas Dostal and actually Soderblom.
Yeah, we will be back tomorrow for our last show before the 4 Nations break, where I'll undoubtedly be healthy for 2 weeks and come back and get some weird illness. We'll knock on some wood. But we'll see you guys tomorrow. Good luck, everybody. Who you liking for your hat trick pick?
You know what? Screw it. Jeff Skinner.
I deserve that. And you know what? JT Miller.
You know, this is the exact kind of game where the Rangers are going to lose 3-1, right?
Yeah, and I'm hoping it happens so they fire their coach.
It'd be interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, we will see you tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern. Good luck, everybody. Good luck.
Good luck tonight, everyone.